This episode is sponsored by KMV Travel, a boutique travel agency that helps families plan personalized vacations and create unforgettable memories on land and at sea. Not only are their services 100% complimentary to guests, but there are some incredible offers that this team can help you take advantage of right now. From hello to see you real soon, KMV Travel provides the resources and support you need to have a stress-free vacation filled with magic, memories, and more. Listeners of this show can learn more and start planning your next vacation by visiting kmvtravel.com/skyway. Welcome aboard Imagination Skyway, your grand podcast tour of the magic. I'm your host, Matthew Kroll, and in today's episode, we're going to answer your questions about all things Disney in a podcast listener Q&A. Candidly, I think this Q&A might be our most informative yet, because the topics broach so many interesting questions, including not just how to make the most of a trip to Walt Disney World or Disneyland, but also our thoughts about the new Lightning Lane Multi-Pass system and the Lightning Lane Premier Pass, whether it's worth staying on property at Disneyland or at a walking distance off-property resort, and some things you might not know about renting Disney Vacation Club points through a third party. There's a lot we discuss and a lot you'll want to hear. At the end of the show, we'll return to Imagination Central, where I'll share ways in which you can stay connected with Imagination Skyway, how you can discuss this topic with others, and how you can help support and inspire the future of this show. Please remain seated, keep your hands and arms inside the podcast at all times, and enjoy your Grand Circle tour aboard Imagination Skyway. You all know this by now. A couple times a year, I like to just open up my Instagram Q&A sticker, email inbox, Patreon posts, Facebook group posts. They're all over, but I like to ask people what questions you would like to be heard on the show and just offer as much advice and insight that you can go back to and listen to at any time whenever you have the time. And as always, for these listener Q&A episodes, it's not just me answering these questions, but I'm always joined by an expert Disney fan, and in this case, travel agent, and that's once again Kelly from KMV Travel. So Kelly, welcome back to the show.
Thanks for having me. Excited to be back.
I'm excited to have you back. I was amazed. I think this might be a record, Kelly, and it's probably because I mentioned your name. I hope that's one of the reasons why. I said I'm going to be recording an episode with Kelly, so what questions do you have? And literally, I saw over 40, 50 questions that came in the span of 24 hours, which is maybe not something to brag about, but compared to some other times, it's sometimes maybe get a dozen questions. This was a record, I think, to get about 50 questions in such a short period of time. And we're certainly not going to address all of them because we would be here for 6 or 7 hours, I think, if we were to tackle them all. But we'll get to probably about a dozen. And we're releasing this episode around the holiday season. So if you're listening live, happy holidays. Hope you have a really great holiday season. We're going to tackle some questions about the holidays, but we're going to go in a different order than we normally do. I generally do this in kind of order that they were submitted, or I'll organize things in, honestly, a pretty disorganized way. So this time, I actually took all those questions, categorized them, and that'll make it also easier to, I hope, bookmark this episode, and you can go back and sort of skip ahead to different points to these different categories. And a category I want to start with is Disneyland. And it's a place that I always tell Disney fans, especially because most of my listeners are focused on Walt Disney World and go to Walt Disney World more often than Disneyland if they've gone to Disneyland at all. It's a place you got to go if you call yourself a Disney fan. You got to make that trip at least once. And that actually leads to this very first question, which comes from Perrin. What should a regular Walt Disney World goer know about going to Disneyland for the first time? Kelly, I'm sure you get this a lot. So what's your advice on this question?
Oh, I started writing my notes on this and I was like, you know what? This is going to have to be a blog post because it just kept going down and down. So I'm going to give you the highlights.
Yeah.
But I think, as we all know, the biggest thing is that it is going to be a smaller property. And when we look at it, even from let's not even take the parks into our thinking there, but just the resort accommodations. We're so used to being very spoiled at Walt Disney World, where if we want to book a trip in 30 days, we can normally get some availability. Disneyland, if you want to stay at a Disneyland resort, it's going to be a little bit more difficult because there's three properties on Disneyland property. Now, with that said, too, there are a lot of options that are off property that are very accommodating, very easy, and very convenient because they're within walking distance. You are literally in a city in Anaheim. So, the nice thing about that is if you need to grab something from Walgreens, you can easily run over there. The hard thing about that is if you don't know the area very well, you could easily get yourself at a hotel that's a mile away and you think you're going to walk it every day. And then you're strolling with that stroller down the street and that can be a little difficult. So that's one thing to think about is just kind of get the lay of the land with that. The other things that are kind of different when we talk about planning for Disneyland, you're not going to have that early park entry to every park. It's going to be, if you're staying on property, it's only going to be for one park. And so they'll kind of define that. And you can look at the park hours online to see which park is going to be open early. Again, it's only going to be open to those families that are staying at a Disney property. Dining is going to open 60 days prior to the reservation date. So that's not really a benefit that you get when you stay on property, unfortunately, at Disneyland. And there are a lot less reservations available just because there's less restaurants over there. So if going to Trader Sam's is a must do for you, that 6 a.m. Pacific time when it opens, you need to be on there for sure at that 60-day mark. I would say, if possible, to fly into Santa Ana or John Wayne Airport if you can, because that's going to be about a 20-minute drive. LAX is going to be about a 50-minute drive. And that's just from my own personal experiences that I've had. I usually fly into LAX because it's the easiest one to do. But I always, as I'm driving back to or over to Disneyland, I'm like, oh God, I could have been there already if I was into Santa Ana. So something to think about it if it is an option for your family. Hotel guests pay for parking, so that's a little bit different than Walt Disney World. And I would totally recommend taking advantage of the mornings. So Disneyland is going to be a park that's much more for, there's a lot of locals that are there. So you'll see from like the 9 a.m. to midday, you can like walk onto attractions a lot of times. But then you get from that, 12 noon going on, especially that like 2 p.m. time when schools are starting to let out, it's going to get a lot more busy. So just take advantage of those mornings. But that's like my kind of top level elevator pitch for Disneyland there.
Yeah, and we've broached this subject with individual podcast episodes about Disneyland planning because there is so much to consider, and I think you hit all of the major points that we should discuss. If I were to add any additional thoughts to this, I think that one, just understanding the fact that the entire Disneyland Resort is roughly the size of the transportation and ticket center, parking lot, and monorail station. Just like wrap your head around that. Like compared to the massive size of Walt Disney World, the city that it is, this is more like a village, right? It's just sort of this walking distance. Everything is walking distance. Even as to your point, that off property resorts, there are some that are 5 minutes you're at Disneyland security with a quick walk across South Harbor Boulevard. You're just kind of there. And certainly the other difference is the weather, which a lot of people picture Southern California. It's always going to be warm and sunny, but there are certainly mornings that you wake up, and this could be even in October where it's still sweltering hot in Florida. There are mornings you could wake up in Anaheim in October, and I know this from experience, and it could be, upper 40s, low 50s, and you need that jacket. But then come mid afternoon, you're like sweating. So you have to dress in layers. It is a dry climate, so there's generally not as much rain, but it can rain at Disneyland, and it does. And the amount of attractions I always say to people that they condense in this little village is incredible. And just walking, I mean, the fact that you walk down Main Street USA, you walk underneath the Main Street the train station, You look to your left, you see the famous firehouse with Walt's apartment above it. And if you were to walk closer and listen carefully, you could hear the Jungle Cruise just behind Walt's apartment because everything is just so, from an urban planning or like an Imagineering perspective, it geeks me out how they just fit all these attractions into such a small amount of space without you even noticing. It's going to take you a 5 minute walk to get over to Jungle Cruise to walk around to the other side. But that's right there. And then right next to that is this little sliver of a queue that goes into this showbox building behind Jungle Cruise. That's Indiana Jones Adventure. And on the other side is Pirates of the Caribbean. And they're all just so closely nestled together. Similar to California Adventure, but really transparent at Disneyland how close all these attractions are. But yeah, you definitely need to go in with a different mindset. The fact that everything is walking distance is great. The fact that you can walk from Disneyland to Disney California Adventure as easy as you can walk from Beach Club to Yacht Club. They're just right next to each other. It's so seamless and so simple. But yeah, there's a lot more that goes into the planning, and it's very different from a Walt Disney World trip, which is why if you are a frequent Walt Disney World visitor and you want to make that Disneyland trip as seamless and successful and enjoyable as possible, to reach out to someone like Kelly because there is, if you've never done it before, it is an entirely different um, behemoth to tackle, and certainly worth doing. And that actually drives us to the second question, because this I get a lot. I get this question a lot, and it's one I've tackled with a lot. It's, would you say that staying on one of Disneyland's on property resorts, which, as you mentioned, are, three of them. You've got the Disneyland Hotel, which is that original one there, California Adventure, Grand Californian, and the Pixar Place Hotel. Is it worth the extra money to stay on property? Are there any conveniences or perks that make it a standout choice over those nearby off-property options? Does the experience change, or is it really worth it to just say, you know what, I'm going to save some money and stay still walking distance, but stay in an off-property resort?
And I always say it's going to be come down to your family and what your priorities are. So for me, I've done both, and I've been to Disneyland many times, and I don't think that, I didn't have a good vacation when I stayed off property. But there were certain things I had to think about when I was staying off property that I never had to think about being on Disney property. So you are in a city, like I said, with Anaheim. So, you're going to walk around. There are going to be things that you see in a city and that you come into contact with. That doesn't mean that Anaheim is not safe. There are definitely police officers that are around and everything. But think about that if, when I stayed by myself off property recently, and I just made sure that I walked with somebody on the phone with me. But would it have probably been a little bit more comfortable for me to stay on property? Yes. But that was, budgetary and everything like that. So I think when you're staying on property, you don't have to think about that. You're in that Disney bubble and you never have to leave that Disney bubble. You also do get that extra benefit of the early park entry. Which is very nice because there it's going to feel like you almost have the park to yourself because there's such a small amount of people that are really taking advantage of that or have the opportunity to. So that 30 minutes we basically knocked out the majority of Fantasyland in 30 minutes because you're just able to get in and do that. So that's a great benefit to have, especially if, it's your first time going or anything like that. Also, you do have the ability to do room charging, which is nice there. It's something that, might be a small benefit for some people, but it's, if you don't have to take out your wallet and do all of those things, there's those little benefits. But the biggest thing is going to be that you're in the Disney bubble versus being out of it, and that you're not really having to walk those extra, steps getting off property to that resort.
Yeah, you certainly are paying a premium to stay on property, which I think you realize if you go and you look at the cost. I mean, most of the times when I'm looking at the Disneyland Hotel, it might, with offers, maybe get down to starting at 500 something a night. You add on the Anaheim city tax and everything else that's on top of it, and you're looking at essentially $700 a night or so for a standard room at the Disneyland Hotel. Again, depending on seasonality, and this is just an um, anecdotal example of what I've seen when I've looked. And then you go and you look off property. And honestly, there are some that are really, really closely situated. The Fairfield that's right across the street, it still is over, in a lot of cases over $300, $400 a night to stay at that property. But then you go down a mile down the road, one of my favorite hotels down there is the Hilton Anaheim and even the Anaheim Marriott, both great options. I've stayed at a number of times for D23. It's just so perfectly situated right next to the Anaheim Convention Center. And those you can get about half the price you would get at the Disneyland Hotel. You can sometimes activate some great deals. But then to your point, Kelly, you're really missing out on, for me, it's always that Disney bubble and the convenience factor and how much am I willing to pay for those things. The last time we went to Disneyland as a family, which was Maggie's first trip, we stayed off property. But honestly, I didn't feel like making that mile trek with Maggie in the stroller all the way over to the Esplanade. And that's mostly because I was thinking about, to your point, like the end of the day, did I feel really comfortable at a late hour going back with them down South Harbor Boulevard? And yes, it's safe enough city, but I didn't feel as comfortable as if I were to actually I would have done the same thing in any city, right? I drove from the parking garage at the hotel to the parking garage at the Disneyland Resort just to have that extra feeling of security and also the factor of convenience. At the end of the day, just hop on the tram to get directly back to the parking garage to fold up the stroller and drive right back to the hotel and just, carry a sleeping Maggie back into the room. But it would have been so much easier. And I've pretty much rationalized with myself at this point that whenever we go back to Disneyland, we're going to do everything we can to stay on property just for that convenience of at the end of the day, literally just like walking back a couple of minutes, excuse me, within that Disney bubble back to our hotel room. Plus, to take advantage, because we are morning birds, take advantage of the early entry, get a lot done in the beginning of the day, maybe head back to the pool in the mid afternoon break. And the other thing is with young kids in particular who are napping, having the ability, just like at Walt Disney World, we like to now stay at resorts that are very, very close to whichever park we're going to, or, in any given day, like if we're going, especially Magic Kingdom, having our home resort be Grand Floridian, just very easily hop on the ferry, hop on the monorail, or take that walk back to Grand Floridian for that afternoon nap. Same thing at Disneyland, to be able to just within a few minutes walk back to our hotel for an afternoon nap is incredibly convenient. So you have to weigh it. To your point, you answered the question right at the beginning by saying it depends on the family, it depends on the circumstances. And back in the day, Joanne and I just kind of like, yep, we're going to stay right off property. This is where we're going to stay, and we have no problem with it. Now with young kids, our needs and our wish list has changed a bit. So it really just depend on what you value. That's going to come down to it. We're going to cap off Disneyland by talking about the future before we move on to Walt Disney World, because we have a bunch of questions there. And some people talking about the Disneyland expansion, and Kelsey in particular wanted to know what our thoughts are on the Disneyland expansion, which is the Disneyland Forward approval that went through the Anaheim City Council. That's now full steam ahead. Going to get lots of exciting things for Disneyland. So what are your thoughts, or what are you looking forward to with the Disneyland expansion?
I'm super excited, I think, as everybody is for it. The fact they're putting so many resources into Disneyland is exciting because I think I'm trying to think in my lifetime, obviously California Adventure opened, but since then there really hasn't been that many resources put towards Disneyland and the kind of that side of the US Disney parks for us. So it'll be exciting to see that. I also love that they're going to have a Coco ride because I think you've seen how much just Disneyland is like the perfect spot for that with the different festivals and offerings they've done in the past. And I just love that they're kind of celebrating that culture. And then to see how Avatar is going to go. I think I'm most interested in that from a standpoint of just how are they going to continue this story in the parks with, not having all the movies having come out yet. But I mean, they always seem to be able to do it. So it'll be interesting to see how they kind of do that on the other coast and continue that storyline. So I can't wait for all of it to open up.
Yeah, I also love the fact that we're going to be getting a new Avatar land of some kind, whatever they're going to end up calling it, and they're going to focus it more on the water side, especially it seems like the second and third movies, so Way of Water and Fire and Ash are going to be the real driving force of this. It seems like we're going to get a major e-ticket and innovative water attraction, which again, I'm going to throw out this prediction. It looks to be based on the concept art, a kind of like trackless water ride of some kind. That's just the vibe I'm getting from it. Could be totally mistaken. Maybe they went the Pirates of the Caribbean Battle for Sunken Treasure at Shanghai direction, but it just seems like the way they talked about it, and the concept art almost makes it to me look like the water ride equivalent of trackless dark ride, which would be really interesting and innovative and exciting. And either way, the land looks breathtaking. But then there's just so much that they've discussed that's possible. And then the other side of this that's maybe not as um, exciting, but I still think incredibly important. I had this conversation with Imagineer Theron Skis about Disney Springs. It's like you design this really beautiful place, and you completely change downtown Disney into this new, expanded, beautifully imagineered shopping district where even the bricks are so authentic. They came from 1901, like, but you intentionally got those same bricks to just like make it as authentic as possible. And what is the thing that people are most happy about with Disney Springs is the parking garages and the bus, like the easing of congestion and like there's that little. It used to be so, especially at peak hours, so stressful to get to downtown Disney and then circle and try to find a parking spot. It was Now it's just so easy, whether you're going by Disney transportation or by car or by rideshare or however you're going to get to Disney Springs and then know, oh, I have this many parking spaces available on this level and clearly see green and red to see what's a space that's available, what's a space that's not, how many in each row. Like that is to me, the brilliance of it. And so bringing that over to Disneyland, they're completely going to change a lot of the surrounding areas around Disneyland to make it easier for pedestrians to get into the Disneyland Resort and for um, folks who are not driving directly into Disneyland to bypass Disneyland to get around it. There's going to be a new entryway from I-5 into a new parking garage. There's going to be a new parking garage. So all these added like bonuses, the improvements to the infrastructure around the Disneyland Resort to me is also very exciting, and it's going to make way for continued expansion and for not just the expansion of the parks, but the expansion of attendance that's going to come with it. So lots of exciting stuff that's in store, and I can't wait to see what else they announce that hasn't been announced yet. Um, and then Abby asked, well, this is not directly related to the Disneyland expansion itself or Disneyland Forward. If you were to look at Disneyland's Tomorrowland, which has been a constant work in progress since 1955, since Walt opened it and said a few years later, you know what, we got to change this already. If you were to look to existing IP that you might want to put into Tomorrowland, what do you think would be a good fit for Disneyland's Tomorrowland?
I love this question, and I would say Meet the Robinsons. I think that it would be like the perfect fit for Disneyland and, Walt's vision of Tomorrowland at Disneyland. It would just fit in so seamlessly.
You win because I have nothing that good, and that's such a deep cut, and it makes so much sense. You definitely win this one. I was gonna go with something like Big Hero, oh, not Big Hero 6, sorry, Wally, because that's not really represented yet in Big Hero 6's, in either park. But uh, yeah, I think it'd be interesting to see. Everyone's wanted this Wally attraction of some kind. So I don't know what you would put there. I'd have to open up another Imagineering episode of some kind where we play armchair Imagineer to really take some time to think about it. But it'd be great to have some sort of Wally attraction at Disneyland. Disneyland often has these more niche attractions that appeal to especially locals who go time and again. You're not just looking for that. There's a lot of classic elements that obviously you get the traditional, Mr. Toad's Wild Ride and Snow White's Enchanted Wish and Space Mountain and Big Thunder Mountain Railroad. You get a lot of those classics, but then you get also these little niche things like San Francisco over at California Adventure, the new Coco attraction that's going to be opening up. And so to see something like a Wally attraction would be kind of cool too. They give you another reason to go to Disneyland.
I like that answer too. I think that's a good one.
Thank you, thank you. Meet the Robinsons wins though. I'm gonna call it. I'm refing this. Meet the Robinsons is a perfect answer for Disneyland's Tomorrowland, and I think most people listening will agree with you on that. But let's and if you don't go see the movie again because I think it's worth seeing and I think it's a great answer. But we spent I think a healthy amount of time on Disneyland, which is great because I love to get people to Disneyland. But let's jump back over to I'm sure what most people listening to the show have booked or are booking soon, which is a trip to Walt Disney World. And because it is the holidays now, while it's a little too late to plan for this holiday season, I think it is the perfect time to start thinking about the holidays in 2025 or whenever you're listening to this. So Amanda asks, what is a must do at Disney during Christmas or during the holidays other than the obvious Mickey's Very Merry Christmas party?
So I loved Disney Jollywood Nights last
Me
year when
too.
it started out, and I'm excited to go back this year. So if you are looking for a ticketed option, I think that that is a great one to go to. But if you're looking for something that's just included in the cost of your admission, I think the Merry Menagerie over at Animal Kingdom and just Animal Kingdom in general during the holidays is one of the most magical spots you can go to. It's definitely going to be, a little bit different. You don't have the same kind of just the tree on Main Street and everything. But it's just such a cool way that they've brought the holidays into Animal Kingdom. And now Santa will also be meeting over there. So in a seated location, he's not going to be on the flotillas anymore. So I think Animal Kingdom in general is my go-to must do for the holidays. That's very underrated.
It's probably the most underrated, I think, of all the four parks. Probably Magic
Yeah.
Kingdom is right at the top, and then you got Hollywood Studios and Epcot maybe tied in that second place, and then everyone forgets about Animal Kingdom, but there's so much that's incorporated into Animal Kingdom. I actually wrote an article for WDW magazine, I think a year or two ago now, that was about specifically the holidays at Animal Kingdom because it gets so forgotten, but how Animal Kingdom incorporates the holiday season, and much like my answer here is Epcot for the International Festival of the Holidays, but that sort of celebrates the traditions and customs of each respective pavilion's host country. The Animal Kingdom holidays are also looking to the customs and traditions of the respective lands, and then Discovery Island is sort of an amalgamation of a lot of those sort of holiday traditions and transformed a little bit into this uh, unified holiday spirit, more focused on the winter solstice than it is on any particular holiday. But yeah, Animal Kingdom I think is definitely underrated. The Epcot's International Festival of the Holidays, I love the fact that you can sample the customs and traditions, like I said, of each pavilion's host country and feel like you're visiting Norway during the holiday season or Japan during the holiday season and get to play a little bit of world traveler as you're going from country to country or pavilion to pavilion, but then also to sample the food that's there. And that, to your point, it's not a ticketed event. It's just something you can go and enjoy. Plus, also Epcot, I love the fact that the candlelight processional is also not a ticketed event. You just go and wait in that standby queue, or I think the best way is to do the dining packages and guarantee your seat. Get there still early. Talked about this with AJ from Disney Food Blog. Even though it is a guaranteed spot, you still want to get a prime spot. So even with that dining package, you still want to get there early. But otherwise, not a ticketed event. So the Epcot candlelight processional for me is still like as great as whimsical and magical as the Very Merry Christmas Party is, and as glitz and glamour, that glitz and glamour feeling you get at Jollywood Nights. There's something so um, heartwarming about the Epcot candlelight processional, and it feels like it's a very traditional Christmas event. So it's just something that even even if you're not Christian or you don't you're more of a spiritual person, like it still is something that you can enjoy and is just it's filled with that beautiful the chorus, the celebrity narrators. It's just such a beautiful performance. So it's certainly worth seeing. Um this is not directly related, or not directly asked, I should say, by any of the listeners, but tangential to this is, everyone's sort of thinking like, all right, well, I've got time to plan for, if you're listening to this live in December 2024, like I've got time to think about December 2025, but when is the best time to actually start planning for the holiday season at Walt Disney World?
The sooner you can, the better. And I say that because it is availability, especially during these holiday times, is highly limited, even in Walt Disney World, where we have, over 25 resorts. So if you can plan in advance, as far out as 12 months in advance, it gives you more time to one, pay off your trip if you'd like. So if you do that vacation package with Disney, it's that $200 refundable deposit at time of booking, and then you don't have to pay the final payment until 30 days out. So you kind of have 12 months to budget for that, or well, 11 months to budget for it. But it's also going to just make sure that you have the best availability, especially if you're looking to stay in a monorail resort, a deluxe resort like Polynesian, Grand Floridian. You're going to see those ones are not going to be available, especially for some of those like standard rooms. And theme park view will quickly go right after that. So that's important to do that for that piece. But then also, if discounts are released, promotions or anything comes out, you're able to apply that to your reservation, even if it's already been booked. So it's the best way to do it because you've locked in that room, you've locked in that rate. So if ticket prices go up within those 12 months, your ticket price is not going up. And if the room price goes down, your room price can go down as long as you apply that discount.
Excellent advice. And again, there's a question here about Disney Vacation Club too that we're gonna talk about. But even on the Disney Vacation Club side, one of the reasons why we decided on a home, there's many reasons we decided on a home resort at Grand Floridian, least of all being, or one of the reasons being timing. But the advantage I thought of is during the holiday season or during Mickey's Not So Scary Halloween Party, having that prime spot right by Magic
Yes.
Kingdom, where let's be honest, over the next probably 10 to 12 years of my girls' lives, like it's going to be so important to have that be so close, or so valuable to have that be so close. But even on the DVC side, with the home resort at Grand Floridian, I am still at that 11-month window booking right away because it is such a busy time of year and a time where anyone who is going to Disney sees added value in staying on property. So it's certainly to your advice, like book it as soon as possible. That $200 deposit, if you can throw it into the mix, then just secure it now. You can always get it back if you or change it if you need to. So certainly, even if you're listening now, if you're like, I want to do the holidays, reach out to Kelly and do it right away because you're going to want to get that sooner than later. So we're actually going to go a month sooner. So we're going to go from December, which holidays is still November too, but more specifically focused on November. This question comes from Jonathan. I understand predicting the future is challenging, but I just booked an 8-night trip, 7-day park ticket, Walt Disney World trip for two over next Thanksgiving week, 2025. What are the chances of special offers or other deals opening up for that time between now and then? And sort of a secondary question, which is from Jacqueline, is it crowded in Walt Disney World in mid-November, which is sort of that week right before Thanksgiving?
Well, first, I'm so excited for Jonathan with his trip being already booked. He can already start his countdown. Another benefit of planning in advance is you always have that Disney countdown going, which I
Mm-hmm.
know for all of us we need to get through some days, sometimes. So with Disney promotions, they normally will have a promotion that's going to be accessible to general guests. So that would be a room rate promotion, and in the last 2 years, Disney has released November discounts in June. So I would say, if we go off of that, we would think that it probably will be in that June, July timeframe. Sometimes there are exclusions for Thanksgiving though. So just be aware of that Thanksgiving week, because it is a prime week, they may not discount those hotel rooms. Now, this is where I think, especially, a lot of people will ask me, well, I'm a huge Disney fan. Why should I book through a travel advisor? And there's a lot of different reasons, but I think one of the main reasons that is nice, even if you're someone who goes, 4 times a year is that I'm constantly monitoring your reservation. So if you're away on vacation when they release that promotion and you can't get on to grab it, there's limited availability for room types, for resorts. So just because they say it's up to 30% off, if you get on 2 days later, doesn't mean that you're going to be able to get it because those rooms may not be available. When you work with travel advisor like myself, we see that come out that morning and everything else drops because this is our priority to get those promotions. So for Jonathan, I would say if you're listening, reach out. We can always transfer trips over if they've been booked within the last 30 days so that we can apply those discounts when they do come out. But it's something to be aware of. Never book thinking you're going to get a discount, but I am happy to hear that you do have it booked because at least you've locked in that rate and hopefully it will go down as we move forward. Now talking about November timeframes, when we talk about what's crowded in mid-November, it's really going to depend, of course, on when Thanksgiving falls. But we know Thanksgiving normally is the last Thursday, so sometimes we'll see it a little bit more crowded than other times. But it's going to be medium crowd levels, I would say, for mid-November. Things you want to think about when you're traveling in November to Walt Disney World, of course, is Thanksgiving. But Run Disney Wine and Dine Half Marathon is the beginning of November. So you're going to have probably that weekend that's going to be a little bit more crowded. Now, that being said, it's going to impact your resort more than it's going to impact your park because most of the runners will come in the afternoon. So as long as you kind of spend your time getting everything done in the morning and then your afternoon is more like your relaxed time, you're probably not going to feel as big of an impact in the parks. The other week you need to be aware of is Jersey Week. I love sharing this because I am a Jersey girl, so my family did take advantage of Jersey Week. So the NJEA Teacher Convention happens every year, and it's going to be the first full week of November. So this is when all of New Jersey public schools close for 2 days, so that teachers are able to go to this convention. And New Jersey families take advantage of this, and we all head on down to Walt Disney World. So you will see that there is going to be a ton of people there the 7th and the 8th this upcoming year, in 2024. So something to look at, and that's one that most people don't even think about if they're not from New Jersey or the Northeast.
Well, let's be honest. I'm from New York. I'm right across the Hudson River, or the East River, both rivers. And I didn't know Jersey Week was a thing until I saw Jollywood Nights inaugural events. And I said, well, let's go to that because I never go to any inaugural events. And I looked at hotel rates and availability. I'm like, what is going on? This is the first week in November, second week in November. Why is it so busy? And then someone said, oh, it's Jersey Week. I'm like, what is Jersey Week? And so I'm like, oh, the entire state of New Jersey is now in Walt Disney World. Got it. So that's something I learned the hard way when trying to book. I literally could not book a. I wish I had, been working more closely with you, Kelly, at that point because I could not book anything for those 3 nights consecutively. I had to do a split stay and look multiple times a day. Finally, got Wilderness Lodge to open up for our entire stay. I'm like, done. We're gonna stay at Wilderness
Yeah.
Lodge. But having someone else do that for me would have been extremely convenient. So,
Yes, the easy things, that we can do as travel advisors to have some good
mhm.
wins for our clients are always the best.
Yeah. I got a few fun questions about Walt Disney World. I feel like we've tackled this before, but I will ask it again. This comes from Imran. What's your favorite quick service eateries at Walt Disney World?
So I did it by park. I tried to be, succinct here. So Magic Kingdom, I would say Columbia Harbor House, and mostly for the view, less for the food right now. I think we're kind of in a lull in the menu over there, in my opinion, even though I still love the chicken tenders. Um, Epcot Lotus Blossom Cafe over in the China Pavilion. At Hollywood Studios, I am a huge Star Wars fan, so it's Docking Bay 7 food and cargo for me. And then Animal Kingdom, like anyone, the correct answer is going to be Satuli Canteen.
I have the same answers as you, except Epcot. I usually go with I'm going to pick if I am going with World Showcase, it's going to be Katsura Grill, and if it's
Ooh,
in the front of the park, which we formerly known as Future World, then it's usually Sunshine Seasons. As much hype as Connections
good
Eatery
picks.
gets, and a couple of great dishes there, the consistent quality of Sunshine Seasons, the ambience, and the fact that the land is still my favorite pavilion, that Sunshine Seasons is my favorite. the fresh food you can get there. It's just it's a great option. But yeah, otherwise, Columbia Harbor House, Docking Bay 7, with a shout out to, as old school as it is, Backlot Express, because sometimes we just want like that MGM Studios vibe and the chicken tenders and French fries. Um, Backlot Express sort of fills that need for me, and then it's always Satuli Canteen at Animal Kingdom. But if you need a backup option at Animal Kingdom, by the way, my runner up is usually the Yak and Yeti counter service, which
That's a
has
good
some
one.
really excellent food. Uh, it's outdoor seating, but a lot of it's covered if it's really sunny. But if it's like extremely hot in the middle of the summer at 1 in the afternoon, it's usually Satuli Canteen, for many reasons. Uh, Second fun question, Walt Disney World related, is your favorite roller coaster in all of Walt Disney World?
So I have to say Expedition Everest because my husband would probably divorce me if I didn't say this. He is a huge roller coaster fan. And so this is the one that we have to do every time we're in Animal Kingdom. And Animal Kingdom is our favorite, like after work park to go to. But great attraction. The theming holds up. And I mean, the ride itself, even if you strip the theming, the ride is just a great attraction.
Yeah, that's an excellent answer. Motion sickness. But if I, thinking back to when I could do most of the roller coasters in Walt Disney World, Expedition Everest is a great answer. I'm going to give a runner up actually to, we're picking non-traditional answers, but Rock and Roller Coaster starring Aerosmith. There's that ride to me always felt, from a coaster perspective, it filled me with the most, it's that fine line between anxiety and excitement. It's that anticipation and suspense, not least of which is turning that corner after the pre-show and seeing the stretch limo launch into this dark tunnel and hearing how quickly the screams go from loud to zero. And just the suspense of it. And then of course the rewritability, where you have five unique soundtracks. They usually only run four at a time. So there's some time periods you might even be able to get one of them for an extended period. It's usually they're doing maintenance on that limo train. But yeah, everything about that attraction. And it could be, people ask about, will it ever be rethemed? I think it is inevitable that it will eventually be rethemed to something else. But you can fit so much in that attraction. It just goes to show, if you ever see the coaster that it exists, the clone of the coaster that exists as an outdoor coaster in Europe, and overlay it instead with Rock and Roller Coaster, you understand how Disney theming is more than just about the thrill of the coaster. It's storytelling, and
Yes.
you compare the two, they're exactly the same ride, but entirely different experiences, because of that storytelling. Um, Oh goodness. Let's actually jump because we have so many questions. We're going to talk about the new Lightning Lane. Before we get to that, last fun question, I guess you could say, or more lighthearted question, is from the Disney Sidekick. What is your favorite signature dining experience at Walt Disney World?
I am a big fan of Citrico's at Grand Floridian, and I think it's a great one for a special occasion if you're just going as adults, but it also has a really great menu for kids. So that's what's so great about Disney restaurants as a family is you can kind of give your children these, heightened dining experiences, knowing that there's going to be something that they are going to be able to eat too.
Yeah. I'm hoping eventually, maybe my answer might be Cake Bake Shop after I give that a try. But I'm going to say California Grill has sort of been my time and again answer for this as long as I've been going to Walt Disney World. I remember going with my family when I was young to California Grill. It was definitely not an every trip experience, but one we did once in a while. And there was something about heading to the elevator, getting to the 15th floor of Contemporary, and then immediately turning the corner and seeing those large windows overlooking the Seven Seas Lagoon. And then if you're lucky enough to get that window seat, and especially during the fireworks, it's just sort of the height. I mean that literally of Walt Disney World dining. And the food has always been so consistent for me. It has lived up to the quality that I remember every time I go back, which is maybe once every 5 to 10 years. I'll go back to California Grill, and every time I go back, I'm like, I hope the food is just as good as I remember, and it's usually just as good as I remember. So add all those things together, it just makes for like this ultimate signature dining experience for families. If I haven't been to Victoria and Albert's yet, it's still on my bucket list, but that is probably going to eventually uh, win out as probably the top answer. But that's really a unique and special dining experience. Um, all right, let's jump into this. We're going to get into some general planning that it implies to both Walt Disney World and Disneyland now. And this is a big question that came in from multiple people that I want to tackle. And this came from Andrew and Jay specifically, are the two that I pulled out from here. So Andrew asked, can you break down the new Lightning Lane? Which I think there's the Premier Pass, and then there's the what people are thinking of, the traditional Lightning Lane, which is now a new Lightning Lane, and then focusing on the Premier Lightning Lane Pass for Walt Disney World and Disneyland. We'll talk about that, but let's maybe first um, go to the not the Premier Pass, but the updates to Lightning Lane that happened earlier this year. So, how does the new Lightning Lane system work?
I feel like I have to like take a deep breath before I go into this one.
There we go.
No, I like have my elevator pitch. This is definitely I think the biggest challenge that families face when they're planning a Disney World or Disneyland vacation, because it does feel like, oh gosh, what am I doing once I get into the park? What am I doing before? So when we break it down, it's going to feel a little bit simpler. So we'll start at Disneyland Resort because that one has pretty much stayed the same as it was with Genie Plus. It's essentially just a name change. So now Genie Plus is known as MultiPass, and individual Lightning Lane, goodness, is known as Single Pass. Same thing is going to go in terms of when you can purchase the multi-pass and the single pass. So multi-pass can be purchased at time of purchasing your tickets for your length of your ticket, or you can purchase it once you get into the park that day. So you have to have entered the park, then you can purchase it. Single pass, once you get into the park, you can purchase it. You're not able to get a single pass in advance when you buy your tickets. When you've purchased your multi-pass or you've gotten into the park, then you'll be able to make your first Lightning Lane selection. So you'll be able to get the first available time. And then from there, once you check in for that Lightning Lane, or 2 hours after park opening for that second one that you're going to do, that's when you'll be able to select the first, your second Lightning Lane. And it's going to be whatever comes first. So if you check in, or if it's 2 hours after park opening, that's when you'll be able to grab it. Going forward, it's going to be 2 hours after you made your last selection, or once you've checked into that next one. So it seems a little bit confusing, and it definitely can take a little bit to get your head wrapped around it. But if you go into the app and you go to your tip board, you'll be able to see, it'll say you're able to make your next Lightning Lane selection and it provides you the time. So just kind of be aware of that. Single pass, same thing. You'll be able to select once you get into the park, and you'll be given the first available time. So now Walt Disney World multi-pass and single pass is where we saw the biggest changes when it comes from that switch from Genie Plus to the Lightning Lane multi-pass, single pass. So starting with multi-pass, this is what Genie Plus used to be. The majority of the attractions that were on Genie Plus are still available on multi-pass. The only big change that we saw is that there are no character greetings that are on multi-pass anymore. So in the past, you could use Genie Plus for the Princess Fairy Tale Hall in Magic Kingdom. That's no longer a part of that. So other than that, attractions are still available on it. But at 7 a.m., 7 days prior to check-in for resort guests, or 3 days prior to the start of your ticket for all other guests, you can purchase and reserve up to 3 Lightning Lanes per park day at one park. So you'll be able to select a specific time that you'd like to go to that attraction, which is nice. And for Magic Kingdom, Epcot, and Disney's Hollywood Studios, you are going to have tiers of the attractions. So basically, if you're tier 1, which is going to be your more popular attractions, you can select one of those. And then you'll have your tier 2, which is going to be those, less popular ones. And you'll be able to select 2 of those. So like I said, that's going to be one park that you're able to select it for, even if you have Park Hopper. Once you get into the park that day, once you redeem your first multi-pass Lightning Lane, then if you have Park Hopper, you can make your next selection for any park across the four parks, or I should say any attraction across the four parks. And continue on like that throughout the day. So it's going to be, you can make your next one once you've used that. So at one time, you are always only able to hold 3 lightning lanes. Multi-pass, I should say, because then we have single pass. So single pass, same thing. You're going to be able to purchase that at 7 a.m., 7 days prior to check-in for resort guests, or 3 days prior to start of your ticket for non-resort guests. And you can purchase for a specific time for the single pass lightning lane. Now you can get up to 2 single pass lightning lanes per park day. So you could select Tron, and then let's say that you're going to hop over to Epcot. You could also purchase that for Guardians of the Galaxy. And you would be able to go through and make that so you can have separate parks on those single passes for Walt Disney World. And same thing, it's going to be just like we experienced with Genie Plus. Once you get into the park, obviously, as you get later in the day, there's going to be less availability. So the biggest thing is going to be try to get earlier times if you can. So then you're able to get more reservations throughout the day.
Yeah, it's incredible how complicated it can seem as you're talking through it, and certainly it provides a requires a different planning process and strategy going into these vacations. And I've shared anecdotally the difference in our park experience on days when we select was formerly Genie Plus, now the new Lightning Lane options, versus a day where we're not going to opt for that. It just requires an entirely different approach and thought process. So the I'm going to throw a question in here. It's going to sandwich these two, and then it'll act as a segue to the next question, which this came from Hannah. And I thought, we should probably address this one. It's rather direct and blunt, but why can't Disney go back to the quote, good old simple days? Do you have any thoughts about this?
I loved this. I laughed when I saw this question because I will say I have been going to Disney since 1994, and my family for a long time before that. So I've been around through the good old days. Oh my goodness, and I think it's we have to remember that, like Walt said, it's going to continuously change, and as society evolves. Disney is going to have to evolve because the people that are coming are different. And I think, Disney has always been a company that wants to lean into technology and really try to push forward with technology. So when they found these opportunities to try to kind of control where crowds are going and make it a better experience for guests, I think that's what they kind of leaned into. And do I think that it's been perfect every time? Absolutely not. But in the end, they're trying to do something to make it easier for guests and also easier for cast members too, which is huge. So I think it's just the inevitable that, you also, some people when Fast Pass Plus came out, they're like, oh, I hate Fast Pass Plus. And now they're like, well, I want to go back to Fast Pass Plus. So I would say there's definitely a transition time of getting into, what these changes are as Disney fans. And I don't, I'll say for myself, I don't take change easily. I'm always kind of a little concerned about it. But I always recommend give it a try, move forward. And this is where I will say, like, working with a travel advisor, someone, obviously I'm a little biased. I think I'm a great candidate for that. But someone who really cares about the company and wants to help you have a good experience with it is a good option when you're kind of trying to transition into something new like this, just because there are so many intricacies and understanding it all. So I don't know why we can't go back to the good old days, but remember that these are the good old days for some Disney fans. So, and I think they will be when I look back in a few years.
Yeah, I was actually going to make that point that the good old days is always subjective. And I know this because I do talk to Disney fans from all different generations, and I get lots of different answers about what their favorite era was. And I remember, as as it is to believe, and like you, Kelly, I've been going to Disney for a very long time. But I remember when free Fast Pass came out, and there were plenty of Disney fans who vocally said they do not like Fast Pass and they wish it would just go back to everyone waiting in a standby queue, that it's now too complicated and it's not fair. And There are people who, if they get there quick enough or know what they're doing, can bypass the standby line. And I distinctly remember seeing people complaining about FastPass. And can you imagine now online people complaining about free FastPass? It just does not happen. The moving target constantly changes. So the Disney can't go by the sentiment of the good old days because it is entirely subjective according to what your definition of the good old days is. It's impossible. The only way that Disney can measure the success of something is by those guest satisfiers. Am I waiting a long time in line? Is my vacation, and this is maybe one of the categories that has changed for the worse or hasn't improved, is, and maybe it's been the same actually. Has my vacation gotten more complicated, or is my vacation too complicated? Is another way that they measure this, and it all comes down to that true in-person or post-vacation research. They have an incredible market research team that is looking at anonymous guest feedback from those who have actually used these systems or have recently traveled and have those fresh experiences in mind to speak to. And they're always using those points as true guidelines because that's the true measure of the success of these systems is, are they being used? Are they helping improve your vacation experience? Are they, we measure a lot of things by how much time we're waiting in line. Are they lowering the average wait time for the average family among, any given moment at the parks? So those are things that we can anecdotally maybe try to remember, but they're looking at the hard, cold data, which is always what's going to drive the true nature of whether these things are working or not. And I like the fact that Disney's always trying new things. And some things work and some things don't. And they pivot and they try new things. And that's great that they're doing that. There are reasons to maybe miss, and I've talked about this before, some of the old systems, the simplicity of the original FastPass system. But that clearly had room for improvement. And they're trying to find that perfect balance between all things. So anyway, this brings us to the question from Jay about thoughts on the new Premier Lightning Lane Pass at Walt Disney World and Disneyland, which certainly drove up lots of comments on social media. But aside from that, what are your thoughts on this new Premier Pass?
So I am excited to try it because when we're recording this, it has not been, it just launched actually today.
Yeah.
So I'll be trying it kind of mid-November timeframe. And I'm kind of excited for it, just to see how it goes because I think, so many of us, especially that are local to Orlando or are just Universal and Disney fans, we've experienced the Express Pass at Universal. And this is going to be very similar to that, where basically you can redeem your Premier Pass at each attraction one time throughout the day. So it will be nice to kind of have that flexibility. And I think it's going to be exactly like I say for basically everything else. It truly comes down to your family, your priorities, and what you value. I can say that for my family, we are a group of adults. We probably, when they come down for their vacation, we probably won't be doing this because we visited the parks hundreds and hundreds of times. So for us, if we get onto Seven Dwarfs Mine Train or, Peter Pan's flight, it's not going to make or break our vacation. However, I have families that I work with where this is their once in a lifetime vacation that they're going to be coming down or, once in a decade. And their priority is to get on as many attractions as possible. So this is going to be a system that is going to allow them to do that in a much easier way than MultiPass will. MultiPass is really going to be where you're going to have to sit down and strategize your day a lot more than with Premier Pass. Premier Pass is going to make it, like so many people are asking, for it to be a lot easier to go through the parks. Now, in Walt Disney World, this is being piloted with deluxe guests right now and deluxe villa guests. And in Disneyland, it is available to all guests and you can purchase it in advance. So Disneyland's going to be 2 days in advance. Walt Disney World will be 7 days prior to your check-in dates. So we don't really know what piloting just, means. Is it piloting the program as a whole, or is it piloting it for, to have it roll out to more resort guests? But I think it's a great option for some families.
Yes, and I think that idea of it being a great option for some families is one to remember. It's one that maybe upsets some Disney fans too, which I can understand. It comes at a cost. And I actually tried to do, and maybe I'll have to do some analysis on this, but I did just very rough math on the high end um, price point that you're going to pay at Magic Kingdom, which right now for this pilot is up to $449 per ticket. If you divide that by the number of Lightning Lane attractions, you're paying on that high end day a little more than $22 per attraction to access the Lightning Lane, which is on the high end of the individual Lightning Lane cost. But keep in mind that you're also one of the benefits of this is you are not constrained by any given time. It's literally the park is mine to navigate as I wish, no matter how I want to move through it. And I'm limited to one time per attraction. But if I want to ride Jungle Cruise right now, doesn't matter what time it is, I'm just going to be able to quickly go on to the app, say, yep, I want to ride this right now, and then walk through Lightning Lane. And I say, you know what? Now I feel like going over to, now I'm going to jump over to Tomorrowland. I want to ride Space Mountain. Just go onto the app as you're walking over there, say, I want to ride this now, hop on in and ride onto Space Mountain. And you could do this with in any order you want. You could prioritize it in the morning. You could prioritize it in the evening. You could sort of go as freely as you want. So there's this huge convenience to it. Obviously, the cost is more than the ticket itself. So you have to weigh what the value of this is. And maybe some people are going to say, you know what? I'm instead just going to opt for an after hours event and pay for an after hours ticketed event and just ride the attractions then, or go during Mickey's Very Merry Christmas Party when people are focused on the events itself. I'm going to use that time to hit attraction after attraction after attraction, or Jollywood Nights, very similar idea. But you know, I've not been in shy in saying that, you know, a couple things. First of all, I'm probably not going to use this. I just don't see the value in it for my family personally. But I am not going to say that it's a terrible system because of it. I don't hate the system because of that. This is clearly not going to be a massively used tool. It's clearly just going to be a subset of the average Disneyland or Walt Disney World park goer who's going to be using it. So if it's not for you, you can ignore it. If and it's not going to impact your experience, it's not going to clog up the Lightning Lane anymore. You know, it's not going to affect your standby wait. And if it is valuable to you, you're going to get a lot of value out of it. At least I hope you will, for, you know, especially for this price tag. But the so I, you know, and the other analogy I've used, as I sort of, because I have to, in this position, always sort of like philosophize and try to figure out like how, what this all stems down to. For me, this is now where our Disney park experience has changed the way that the airline industry has changed. And there are now levels of experiencing a Disney park, and the way that there are levels of experiencing a flight. Because when you take a flight, you are getting, no matter what, how much you paid for that ticket or where you are sitting, you start in one destination and you end in another, and everybody has the same flight time. They have the same, you know, the same everything from a functional perspective. But then the experience has changed dramatically from you sitting in a, you know, a basic seat ticket that you don't, you know, you're assigned your seat. You don't pick your seat. You maybe can get a carry-on bag. You pay extra if you want to check a bag. You don't get a meal with it. You get a couple of free snacks. It's a very different experience from the person sitting in business class in the front of that plane, who boards first, who has more space than three or four people in the back of the plane, who get the meals included, who get you know, extra service, VIP service in the front. They're all getting to the same place, but their experience is different, and their priorities, because of how much they're paying per ticket, change. So for me, if we were to use that analogy, the economy ticket is the person who just, and mostly like us, like how we go to the parks, we just show up at the park, we wait and stand by, we do it however we want to, you know, move through the park. Maybe we don't get the convenience of hopping right on to Seven Dwarfs Mine Train. Maybe it is a 60, 90-minute wait, but we're still getting onto it at the end of the day. We're just waiting a lot longer to ride it. So that's the economy ticket. The multi pass is sort of that economy plus, which Delta calls comfort plus, others call economy comforts, or however you want to categorize. But you get those little extra space, little earlier boarding. It's maybe a couple of extra, like premium snacks instead of the economy snacks. And then you still have the business or the first class, which is the VIP tour, right? That's the person who is getting that true premium VIP experience. And this is what airlines have carved out as this new, over the last 4 or 5 years, type of ticket called premium economy, where it's nestled somewhere in between that economy plus or comfort plus seat and that business class seat. It's a much smaller cabin, but it's that like that premium but not luxury level. So that's kind of how I've been using this analogy. It's like everyone still gets to the park. They have the same park hours, and everything else, the same attractions that you can access. It's just how you're accessing those attractions and the experience you move through the park that changes. And what's valuable to you, much like the seat you pick on an airline and how much you can justify spending or afford to spend, is going to change your experience. So that's just, fortunately or unfortunately, how it is now. You just have so many other options to choose from. But I don't think your experience in that standby queue, in the economy level of this analogy is going to change just because, excuse me, the Premier Lightning Lane Pass is available. Um, let's maybe just go through one or two more questions. And this is one that's, well, let's be honest, as a travel agent, I feel like I try to circumvent this question a little bit. It's like the Disney Vacation Club questions, right? Because you're not, if I'm using my points, you're not getting any business out of me. But I still think that this is a really valuable question. So this comes from Brian. Do you have any recommendations for a service to rent Disney Vacation Club points? He wants to try, but he's nervous. So those who are not familiar, there is a third-party market where existing Disney Vacation Club members like myself, if we're not planning to use our points, can rent out our points for someone else to take advantage of and use, because in a lot of cases it's use them or lose them if we're not going to bank or borrow them. And then, because we're getting, essentially, we have paid for it in advance, so we're getting a pretty big discount because of that. We're sort of passing on that discount to you, to rent out those points and get a lower cost to stay at a deluxe villa. So Kelly, in your case, I have thoughts about this, but what are your thoughts about renting points through DVC or third
So,
party, I should say?
yes. So I will say my family has been DVC members since 96. So we have, we have never done the second, the kind of renting, because obviously we didn't need to, because we had that. And as a travel advisor, of course, this is a question that I get constantly, because I will say there is a lot of cost saving ability with doing this. So renting those DVC points. The point that I always make to my families that come to me and ask me questions about it is just to make sure that you are aware of what a cancellation and modification policy is going to be with this. Yes, you are going to pay less, but it's kind of like, and Matt, you and I were kind of talking about this before. It's similar to, like, if you see, if you book a Marriott where it will say book now and you pay a lower rate, or pay now, I should say, versus paying when you get there at check-in. You're paying for that convenience of being able to modify or cancel with, very little, a lot of ease. So with these companies, obviously, because there's a lot that goes into this outside of when you're doing a cash rate through Disney. Cash rate through Disney, we have so much flexibility when it comes to modification and cancellation. When Hurricane Milton hit recently, it was very easy for me to call in and get my family's changed or canceled without penalty or whatever it may be. For companies like this, I'm not sure how it would work with a hurricane when things like that are happening, but I will say that there are fees that you'll incur here that you wouldn't incur doing a cash rate. So I know for families that have used these systems before, they have had to pay when they needed to change a name on the reservation. So Emily can no longer come, but now Julie was going to come. They paid a fee in order to change that name. With a cash rate, that's just reaching out to Disney or reaching out to your travel advisor and saying, hey, I just want to swap the names. So there's a lot that goes into that that I would just say before you do anything, just make sure that you're looking at that. But there are a lot of great companies out there. If you do a quick Google search, you'll see many, many that come up. And I always encourage any family that I work with to just make sure you read reviews. If you can get a referral from another family that really enjoyed it, that's probably going to be your best bet. But that cancellation modification policy is going to be highly important to read.
Yeah, it definitely depends. And part of the reason why there's less flexibility on the rental side is because there's less flexibility on the Disney Vacation Club side. So if I, as a Disney Vacation Club member, use my points and then 2 weeks, or let's not even 2 weeks, let's say a week before, something happens, something urgent comes up, there's a family emergency, whatever the circumstances might be, and I need to move that trip. Unfortunately, because I'm now within the 30-day window of that vacation, I can get those points back, but they're put into this holding place. It's sort of like a parking lot where I can't bank or borrow those points. They're stuck in the current use year, and I have to use them within a 60-day reservation. Not that they have to be used within 60 days, but in my current use year, I cannot book more than 60 days in advance. So I have to see whatever is available in the 60-day window. So I only can look 2 months into the future to reuse those points that I used. There is an insurance policy that Disney Vacation Club members can get, which is a pretty good rate. It's $99 for the entire year, but that doesn't give me flexibility with my points. It just sort of ensures the annual dues I spent on those points. Which really I'm in it for the flexibility part of it, not so much the getting my money back on the annual dues portion of it. So there's just a lot more, I guess, is a lot less, I say, a lot less flexibility on the Disney Vacation Club point system than there is on the cash system. Whereas, if I book a cash rate at Grand Floridian, like 8 days before, if I need to cancel then or move, I can get my money back if I need to, or if it's within that certain period of time that it's now within the cancellation policy, I can at least get, everything minus a small cancellation fee, which I think is usually like the first night's deposit, back. So I'm not entirely left out, but I the rental side of it, I don't think people realize that they talk a lot of them talk about this great cancellation policy that you can use, and I don't want to call any out in particular because it's kind of across the board across all of them. The cancellation policy is actually not, in my opinion, not that great. So just as one example, if you were to book a stay, where in a lot of cases you also need to leave the entire deposit within a certain number of days. You need to completely pay for that vacation. Much to Kelly used that same example. When you prepay for a Marriott and get that prepay rate, you're paying for it all in advance, and then you can't get that money back. After 24 hours have passed, whether you cancel that trip or modify it, it's gone. That's if you have to cancel or modify for any reason. You got advantage of a lower rate. It comes with the expense of much less flexibility. So with these rental companies, a lot of cases, 120 days in advance, you can get 100% back if you cancel within a 120-day window. But in most cases, it's not a cash refund. It is a credit towards a future stay through that same company. And if you're now within the 1 month window of time, and you need to cancel or modify for any reason, you're only eligible to get sometimes 25% of what you paid back to apply towards a future vacation. So that is the side to be nervous about, is that you need to be 100% sure that this is exactly the dates you're going to go, and nothing is going to impact that. No one's going to get sick. No one's going to have an urgent event come up, which in my case, I am never that sure, which is why I've actually never done the rental side of it. I've always opted to pay a little bit more, take advantage of the great offers that Disney has available, especially for annual pass holders. Sometimes the difference between what I'd pay through a rental store and what I'd pay through Disney is not that different. I'd be saving maybe a few $100s, but I'm willing to spend that extra few $100s for the increased convenience and flexibility and peace of mind of being able to modify things. So I know people who have done it who say great things about it. And if, it is a way that you can experience sort of the cost savings of Disney Vacation Club and decide if it's right for you. But I still prefer, if I'm not using my points, to go with a cash stay directly through Disney. I'm maybe a little bit old school that way, but having that peace of mind and flexibility and security is always worth it for me. Um, so just, I guess the point is read the fine lines and the cancellation policies for the companies that you do use for these third party rentals, because even if they do call it a like flexible or easy or stress free or whatever they want to call it cancellation policy, you can call it what you want. You read the fine print. It's not as stress free and convenient and flexible as booking a cash stay through Disney. So that's just something to keep in mind when you book uh, rental store, renting points from any of the stores that are out there. But another reason, again, I'd prefer to work with Kelly or whoever your preferred travel advisor is for something like that. Um, let's go to one final question about general planning, because it could apply to Disneyland or Disney World. This comes from Samantha. What is your favorite tour that you've taken? For example, Keys to the Kingdom is one that she lists there, and which is on your bucket list.
I'm going to say the bougie answer, and I'm going to say a VIP tour. I've been very, very lucky to do a VIP tour at Disneyland and Walt Disney World. And I will say that if you ever get the opportunity, it's a great, just an incredible experience. I mean, it truly is the VIP experience. And the way that we have done it is we've just gotten a big group of people together, where we picked the lowest cost day that we could. So like a Tuesday in February. And, we kind of split it that way. So it was a reasonable cost at that point, knowing the value that you got out of it. But I think the tour that I would be most excited to do would be, I think, just any of the other tours at Disneyland, because I've never experienced any of the other ones. I've done a lot of the ones at Walt Disney World. I loved Behind the Seeds, which is such a great tour for families and is so just accessible in terms of the cost. So if you're looking for something a little bit, more special to do, that little ones can be involved in too. There's not a terribly high age limit on that one, or age requirement, I should say. That's a great one. But if anyone wants to take me on a tour in Disneyland, I'm ready to go. So.
Yeah, I think all of them at Disneyland are on my bucket list of. I have been lucky enough that a friend who was already doing a VIP tour on a time I was already traveling invited me to go on the VIP tour as well, because you pay per hour. You don't pay for up to a certain number of people. So they still had room, so invited me to join with them. I did participate, or did contribute to the gratuity at least for the guides, but I man, talk about imposter syndrome. I was like, I do not deserve to be on a VIP tour right now. Like, who am I? That's this getting this extra special VIP treatment. I just put me back in the standby queue. I don't. It's okay. You don't need to get me through the back door of Pirates of the Caribbean.
We had very
But
different experiences. I was like,
very
yes.
yeah, very very different experience. And I'm a pretty humble guy as much as I can be. So I felt so weird for me to be literally led like a celebrity through the parks. Great experience. Love friends with VIP tour guides. Love VIP, the VIP tour offering itself, but I feel so weird. I'm going on a VIP tour myself. My favorite one is actually the Keys to the Kingdom tour that I've done. Bucket list tour for me is, I cannot remember the name of it. The equivalent one at Disneyland is one I still haven't done. So that's up there, along with the Starlight Safari we talked about in our Animal Kingdom Lodge episode. Is another one. Having worked at Kilimanjaro Safaris, it just seems like a really fun, intimate experience out in the savannah at Animal Kingdom Lodge. So that would be my answer. Um, we tackled so many questions today. I think about a dozen, if I'm counting, and some pretty large topics at that. So Kelly, thank you so much for participating in this. I think people are everywhere already know where to go, but where can people go to learn more. And if they are, Jonathan, if you're within that 30-day window, or if you just booked within the last 30 days, contact Kelly, have her transfer it over to her, and then she'll activate any discounts that become available for you. So you don't have to keep looking on your November trip. But anyway, where can people go to work with you, learn more about you, and follow you?
Yeah, so online you can head to kmvtravel.com. That's where you can fill out a form if you're interested. Or on Instagram, you can reach out to our company at KMV Travel Co. Me personally, I'm on Instagram at Kelly's Magical Vacations. But you also have a form on your Instagram, on your website, Matt, with all the information to get in contact with us. But if you do reach out, let me know that you came over from this episode. I would love to chat with you. Even if it's just a question about how Lightning Lane is working, don't hesitate to reach out.
Yeah, definitely reach out to Kelly. As always, you can reach out to me with questions as well. But Kelly, thanks so much again for joining these Q&A episodes. We'll have some more in the future. And yeah, thanks for being on the show.
Thanks, I really appreciate it.
Welcome back to Imagination Central. As you disembark, please remember to remain fully seated until the podcast comes to a complete stop. Then gather your belongings and watch your head and step as you exit. Also be sure to check out Kelly's team at KMV Travel, our official travel partner. You can learn more and get started on your next Disney vacation by heading to kmvtravel.com/skyway. If you haven't done so already, be sure to create a free Imagination Skyway account over at patreon.com/imaginationskyway. I am continuing to turn this into your one-stop shop for Imagination Skyway content, podcast episodes, and more, so be sure to create a free account there, or consider signing up for one of our paid subscription options for even more surprises. You can even try one of those for free for 7 days. In fact, if you already have an account, be sure to leave your thoughts about today's discussion directly on this episode in the Patreon app. Remember, you can also engage with the show on social media by searching for Imagination Skyway on your favorite app or heading to imaginationskyway.com. Thank you so much for riding aboard Imagination Skyway, and remember, if we can dream it, we can do it.